This morning I'm going to talk about something that came to my mind over the past year or two, where I'm at a point in my career where people are asking me how I got to that point in my career, which was really awkward because I don't really know how I got to this point in my career. And people are asking me this because they want to know how they can get to a similar point. Say, you're a front-end developer. How did you become a front-end developer? Which again, kind of awkward. I didn't go to front-end developer school, or I don't have a degree in front-end development. I have this really weird, strange mishmash of talent, or not even talents really, that's going way too far, definitely, but skills and things I've picked up over the years. I studied computer science a little bit. I don't have any really design background, although I have worked as a designer. I've been just teaching myself things and then stealing things from other people for over a decade now. But there's no clear path to say, I started here and decided I wanted to get here and now I'm here, and so that's great. You could go do the same thing. So that's what these people want to know when they ask me these things, because they want to know how they can get there, and I don't really have anything to tell them. And I've been involved in education for the last couple years, partly because of this. So I felt there were no clear ways for people to achieve these goals or to get in and learn how to do things that they want to do. I think this is true for anything in the web field. I think it's specifically true for this little kind of niche of people who do maybe a combination of design and development or work in the front end area, unicorns, if you will. So the solution I came up with is, well, if we want to start teaching these people and start expressing how we got to where we are and how other people can get there too, and bringing new people into the industry, we all need to step up and learn how to be really good mentors and learn how to teach what we know and what we do, and kind of fill in those gaps ourselves. Which sounds very ambitious, but that's okay because we've got 45 minutes and I'm going to explain all of it, and it's going to be completely fine after that. So let's start with talking about where we are in terms of web education right now. A little bit of audience participation, if you'll indulge me. Can everybody who has a degree in exactly what they do now for a job raise their hands? There's a few. Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, I'm surprised there's a few. How many people here are entirely self-taught in their profession? Okay, that's about what I would expect. So good job for fitting in my expectations, otherwise you would have thrown off my whole talk. Actually, I've done this talk a few times, and that's usually how, and I've done it to slightly different environments, sometimes with people who do more development, people who do more design, but typically that's the same response I get, is that there aren't a lot of people who have a degree in exactly what they do on a daily basis now, a lot of people who are self-taught. And here's another question. How many people here sometimes feel overwhelmed about keeping up with new topics, keeping up with new learning? Okay, awesome, great. So we're all in the same boat. That was pretty much everybody. And that definitely mirrors my own experience. Like I said, I have a very strange educational path. I don't have a degree in what I do. I don't have a degree at all, actually. And I definitely have always felt overwhelmed about keeping up with the latest things that I need to learn to just to not even be on the cutting edge, but do my job effectively on a regular basis. So that all says to me that there's something wrong with web education, that we have a lot of people who aren't getting the educational support that they need either in the beginning or as they go on in their careers. And I think that's kind of a problem. It's a problem for a lot of different reasons. Hopefully you guys are all just like really great, ambitious, empathetic people, and you're just like, yeah, that's an awful problem. But if you need to be sold on why it is a problem and why we need to solve it, I can talk a little bit about this too. So this is a completely made-up scientific graph. I just totally made it up, but I think it still is scientific, and it demonstrates the point I want to make, which is what all graphs should do, whether they're real or not. Now in future, this is internet usage and everything that we're doing on the web. I don't really think this is going to go down at any point. I'm not necessarily an expert in everything, but I think it's safe to say that the web is not going anywhere and is probably going to be increasing as we go on. So we're going to need more people with more people using that, we're going to need more people making it and more people who are able to be literate in it and be able to interact with it well. There's a whole new generation coming up, and this is their world. It's all digital. I have a really good example of this. My 9-year-old daughter is sitting in the front here with not paying attention to me on her iPad. She gets an exception for the devices because she's smaller. But I definitely learned that bringing up a child in this generation is that this is I'm not even all that old myself, and it's already completely different for her than it was for me in terms of having access to internet and having opportunities to make it. Night and day. I didn't have the internet access to the internet until I was 20. She's had it since she was 2. So this is something that I see a lot of evidence in my own life and the industry that I work in that is definitely going to be increasing more and more. I think it's really important that as we bring new people into the industry, and our industry needs are going to rise. In fact, there's already a lot of people now who talk about we can't find enough good developers, we can't find enough good designers, we need more people in here. So we need to teach them in order to bring them in here in the first place. So I want to talk for a minute specifically about unicorns. That's the title of my talk. Like I said before, I feel like the things that I've been talking about are true on all levels of web work, web education. But specifically, I feel that this is very important for what we call unicorns in this industry sometimes. Actually, just before, I did have permission to share this story. I was going over slides, and my daughter was sitting beside me, and in my notes, I have, "What is a unicorn?" And she said, "That's a really easy question." I'm like, "Well, what is it?" And she said, and I quote, "It's a pink fluffy pony with a horn dancing on rainbows." So I said, "Those are unicorns." So I said, "True. Not exactly what my definition is." So my definition that I'm using here is how I see it used a lot more in the industry, whereas somebody who knows both in design and development, and there's a lot of range in there. Sometimes these are just front-end people who are really good at understanding both parts. Sometimes these are full-on developers who understand the other part, full-on designer that also understands code, things like that. The point you're getting at there is somebody who understands the holistic view, the holistic definition, meaning, whatever term you want to put to that, of what the site or application is all about. Understands both sides and understands both sides of the discipline in making that. This is a really important thing to foster among people. I don't think that we all need to be generalists in the sense that we only know how to do a lot of things okay. I mean, that's worked for me, but specialization is important, and I do support that. But I think having this understanding of how all the pieces fit together is really important and something that we should be fostering specifically no matter what you actually do on a day-to-day basis for your work. Even if you only do back-end development and never do anything else on the other side, you should understand how all the pieces fit together. And same for maybe a UX designer who never touches code or anything like that. So when I'm talking about unicorns, I'm talking about not necessarily these rare beings or fluffy pig ponies, but I'm talking about people that understand how all the parts of the whole fit together. And specifically, these are not people that just are going to happen and they're rare and they're only 1 out of a million. We can actually grow unicorns. We can actually grow people who understand how everything fits together and understand how to work with other people in a team to build better applications or sites or whatever we're making. We all have the potential to be unicorns. So as mentors, one of the things we should be doing is not necessarily just trying to find people who are good at one thing or another, but encouraging this holistic understanding in everybody. Whether you have this experience in one level, as a mentor, you can pull out things that they want to learn about and support that journey and make sure you're creating well-rounded web workers. I have a lot of people when I talk about mentoring who are saying, well, I don't know a whole lot of stuff, so I can't really be a mentor. And this is just like I was saying, everybody can be a unicorn, everybody can be a mentor. Believe it or not, you can be. There's a lot of things that everybody in this room has to teach somebody else whether you realize it or not. It doesn't matter what level you are. You could be a complete beginner, and yet you still have something to offer as a mentor. It may be different than somebody who's been in the industry for a number of years, who has a very specific skill set. But you can still find ways to mentor, and we can all be mentoring each other at all different levels, at all different stages in our careers. And to drive the point home, what I was saying earlier is that we can't really afford not to. We can't wait for the universities to catch up. We can't wait for all of the elementary schools who are doing their great coding and web programs. By the time, that's really great. By the time those people get to the industry, it's going to be many years down the road. We have a need now. So we really need to all step up and learn how to be good mentors so we can create these type of people that we want to work with. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit, how to do that exactly. So when we're thinking about what we're teaching, there's a couple questions that come to mind. And the first one may be, so what do we teach? And this goes back to what I was just saying, is that a lot of people who don't feel they're experts or maybe don't know a ton about a certain topic or any topic at all, maybe think that, well, I can't teach anybody anything. But when I talk about what we're teaching people and what we're teaching as mentors, it's not necessarily JavaScript or a particular language or tool or anything like that. You may be doing that, but that's not necessarily what I'm talking about in mentorship. We can go a level higher and talk about not so much technologies, but methodologies, ways of thinking. A really important one to start out with is don't teach a thing, but teach somebody to learn how to learn. I've been in the education space for a past year and a half. I worked at a Ruby on Rails training program. And this is one of the most important things that I learned is that especially people who are just learning may want you to give them a particular answer. You're not really going to be doing them any good if you just give it to them. But if you teach them how to learn on their own and develop those own muscles, then they're going to be able to learn whether you're there or not. And you're not going to be there at some point in the future. So this is good for everybody involved. We have this habit, I think we've all been taught this, of going into schools and sitting down in classrooms and we're just fed information and then we have to regurgitate it back for tests and everything, and that's education. But that doesn't really teach us thinking skills and it doesn't teach us research skills, which as a web developer or designer, that's a lot of what we do. A lot of students who would come through the door, I feel like they don't always believe developers, and when we tell them, it's like, no, honestly, I just know where to go find the answers. I don't have everything memorized up here. I just know how to think through a problem and where to go find the answer, and that's a large part of what their jobs are like. One of the most important things to do is to learn how to ask the right questions. This is something, it can be a very simple example of this is just how to craft a good Google search. Sit down with somebody who's just learning about the web and they need to figure out how to do something. And you say, well, let's search on Google for it and see what they type into the search box. So some of them don't know what to type at all. They're like, well, I don't know what to ask, which actually is the problem in the first place. If you don't really know how to craft the question, then you don't know what it is that you're trying to get to in the end. So walking people through a step of like, well, let's learn how to craft a good question. What are the things that you're working with? What's the technology you're working with? What's the tool you're working with? What is it that you want to achieve right here? Or is there a particular error that's coming up? Oh, there is a particular error. Hey, we should have read that error. That would be useful information. Maybe we can add that to our questions and our searches. So basically there's this period before you find an answer or even before you ask for an answer of gathering information, understanding how to formulate the right question. Sometimes you try to go for an answer and realize it wasn't the one you wanted at all. But anyway, this is a very common thing that I see in students and people just learning. So being aware of this as a mentor and taking the time to walk people through a good problem-solving process is invaluable. So another thing that follows from that very nicely is pushing the idea of self-directed learning. And it's very much of the same thing that I talked about in the principles of you're not always going to be there to walk somebody through a process. So as a good mentor, your job is to make sure they're going to be learning without you at some point in there. So teaching them the skills to be able to do things on their own, like maybe go find an answer for themselves rather than waiting for it to be told to them, is going to be a very valuable skill. And this is also something that is really great because this can something you can be as an example as well, because you should always be learning at the same time. I used to teach at a school where we use this metaphor a lot, or analogy, something like that, of the idea of restaurants and chefs in the kitchen. And we say sometimes students would come in and think that the school we were working in was a restaurant where they came in and they sat down and they ordered something off a menu and it was delivered to them, and that was education and they're all good to go. But we didn't treat it that way. Well, we treated it more like we're all chefs together in a kitchen. Like you're going to come in as a student and we're not going to sit you down at a table in the front room. We're going to bring you into the kitchen with us and we're all going to be working next to each other to create something. We're at different levels of understanding and skills and experience, but we're all working together on the same team and we're all learning things and learning how to work together. It may seem a little bit strange saying, well, self-directed learning, that sounds like you just go off in a corner by yourself and learn, but that's not what it is at all. It's about being able to be an autonomous when you need to, but also just be a team member that is able to function and contribute what you have and help support each other out. So that chefs in the kitchen versus a restaurant is a really good thing to teach people, that they don't have to just be served. They can come in and help make things. And this is something I've talked about a little bit too, but teaching this idea of holistic learning, that you don't need to necessarily know just this one narrow path of things that you're learning. So like I taught at a school that we did mostly Ruby on Rails. We did full stack, but that was the idea. And so there were people come in and be like, no, I don't want to learn about CSS because I am going to be a Rails developer and I don't need to know anything about anything else. I'm not going to be actually writing that. And I'm like, well, that's a nice idea. Good luck with that. But you know, on a principle level, that doesn't work either, because if you're working in any way to make part of an application, you should understand how the other parts go together. So we want to empower people to be able to explore other areas. I've found in my experience a lot of reasons people don't know something about something that they don't know about is usually they feel intimidated, or they feel that, well, I don't know that well, so I can never do that well, so what's the bother of learning? As somebody who's been a design/developer and spent time in that intersection, I've talked to a lot of developers about design with this, or a lot of designers who don't know anything about code. And a lot of them seem very just, I don't know how to do that, it's all very confusing, it's really hard, and I would suck at it, so I'm just not going to learn about it. This idea of holistic learning goes hand in hand with the idea that you don't have to be an expert about it to get value out of it or provide value. Learn about it because it is adjacent to something that you do know a lot about. Learn about it just because that's going to help you become a well-rounded person. Learn about it so you'll be able to offer something in the terms of creating a more robust application. There's lots of different things. Or maybe you just want to learn about it because, you know, it would make you slightly more interesting as a person. That's always a good thing, too. The whole idea is that we should never feel that we only have to learn what we're already good at to be better at that only. We should all be learning about lots of different things and throwing different things into the mix. And it also really helps communication. So even if you don't know a lot about how to do something, if you don't know a lot about how to actually build a Rails app or what is going on in the back end of that, the more you understand about it, at least in principle or at least in general, the better you're going to be able to communicate with the people who are doing that. So you don't necessarily have to be doing the things that you want to learn more about. Sometimes you can just use it for communication purposes. But in the end, the more you know about the whole picture, the better off everybody's going to be in terms of making the whole picture. So after we figured out what we're teaching, here we go. So how do we actually do this? How do we actually go and find people who want to learn and who want the things that we have to offer? And this is where we have to look in a little bit at existing structures and making new structures. So one of the easiest ways to do this if you work in a company is you have apprenticeships where you can literally bring in new learners and you teach them what to do on the job. So apprenticeships, I think, have been gaining a lot more interest and publicity recently, which is a really great thing. Is anybody unfamiliar with the term apprenticeship or has no idea how that works in the web world? Okay, which is totally good. I didn't want to phrase that in a way like, wait, you don't know about this? But no, because it was an old idea for a very long time, and I feel like it's just starting to get back into an industry where we're trying to figure out ways to bring new people in and get people educated enough to participate. So a lot of our apprenticeships now will be people who are either complete beginners or maybe have learned a little bit on their own or just have a little bit of knowledge. Bring them in and bring them into a company. Various sizes. There are large companies that have apprenticeship programs. There are very small companies. But basically, they all have a structure in place where they can bring people in to work alongside more experienced people and learn the craft. So I've seen some really great apprenticeships. I've seen some not great apprenticeships. But I think that this conversation here is about, well, how are we bringing juniors into our company? If you are somebody that wants to invest in mentorship and you want to invest in bringing people in, you need to be able to set up a structure that has the time to devote to people who are just learning and people who are learning how to mentor too. So it's not as easy as it sounds just to plop somebody beside you and have them just soak up everything you're doing. It takes some time that you have to devote to unlearning all the old learning habits that I talked about before and teaching them how to learn on their own in the ways that is going to be best for them. So an apprenticeship is not necessarily an easy way, but it is, after we figure out the model, I think, it's going to be easier for more people to pick it up and just directly bring people into the company and make employees that you want out of them. You don't want to bring in juniors without being able to devote time to them, but if you are a company that is thinking about doing this, think about it. You can bring in a junior and then teach them to do things exactly the way you want it to be done. So there's a lot of really great benefits out of that. Plus, there's somebody who has got a really solid educational process, and now they are a fully fledged web worker, and everybody kind of wins. So I think that the more we explore apprenticeships and come up with good models, the better we're going to be bring on board people in quickly. If you don't run a company or don't have the option of doing an apprenticeship at your company, that's okay. You can still be a mentor. In fact, there are probably even more opportunities for mentorship because we live in this wonderful web community where all kinds of people are learning different things and they all need some help doing that. So all you really need to do is look around and see who is looking for the things that you have to offer. I guarantee you somebody will take you up on the offer. So here's a list of some of the organizations that I've been involved with. I do a lot of work with Girl Develop It. I think there's a brand new chapter that just started in Charlotte too. Is anybody familiar with Girl Develop It or heard of them before? Okay, that's pretty awesome. If you're not, it is an organization, there's many chapters in many cities that offer introductory programming classes aimed at women. They are always looking for TAs. That's a really great opportunity to interface with people who are very new to the industry and are trying to learn in a really open, friendly, supportive environment. I used to work for Dev Bootcamp, which is one of the hacker academies that there's a lot of now. And same deal, where mentors are always very much wanted. So there's an opportunity to talk to people who are heads down, really, really working to make a career shift into becoming web developers of various types. And having somebody with some industry experience is invaluable to them. If you want to go a little bit, and Rails Girls, another organization I've been involved with, does very much the same things as Girl Develop It, specifically aimed on Rails. And then there's a couple other organizations that are aimed at the younger generation, which we want to get them early. I think everybody is now familiar with Black Girls Code, which is awesome. And Coder Dojo is another one that does classes for kids. So if you want to, starting with kids in your mentorship career is definitely starting very early. But if you are new to kind of teaching or mentoring people and you really want to work on it, there's no way that you're going to learn faster than to learn how to teach a kid, because it's not this, adults will be polite with you. Kids will not be polite with you. One of the most important things that I've learned when I've taught my daughter HTML and we work on websites together, and if you're working side by side with somebody who doesn't know as much as you, there's always going to be some point where you're going to want to grab the keyboard and just do it. If you're working with a kid, they will yell at you for that, and they should. My daughter did that once. She's like, no, I want to do it. And I was like, that's right. That's a really good reminder that I'm supposed to be helping you walk through this, not just do it myself. So there's a lot to be learned yourself out of teaching kids. But there are dozens of organizations just like this list here that are in all cities, in all countries, and these are all opportunities for you to learn how to mentor. So if you really want to focus on your skills with this, then look around what you got in your city or community and reach out and see what you can do to help. Another way to do this is through open source, and this is also something that is really great for people who are unicorns or want to be, or in this, this middle ground of having a variety of different skills. There are lots of open source projects that need design help, also, to put it nicely. No, but there's lots of projects out there that are looking for people with different skill sets that they may not have, because a lot of open source projects are labors of love, and so there's just one person or a small team doing their thing, and so they're limited in terms of the people they have working on it, or how many hours they have working on it, and what skill sets they have in there. So if you are a designer who wants to work more on some software projects, look up an open source project. If you are a developer who wants to practice more design stuff, this is a really great low barrier way to do that, because you can just jump in and try some things out. So where this comes in with mentorship is that you have a bunch of people who are doing things mostly as side projects, or doing things that they're just interested in because they want to try them out. So this is a really great place for you to jump in, learn something new, and also help other people who are learning something new. I say this too as a chance for you to learn something new, because one of the important things of becoming a mentor is remembering what it feels like to learn. And sometimes you always have to challenge yourself to keep reminding yourself of how scary and intimidating it can be sometimes to learn. If you forget that, then you don't always have the same perspective of a student coming in, and you're not always going to be as an effective mentor because you're not understanding where they're coming from. It's very easy for us to get comfortable in our niche that we're very good at and forget what it was like when we started and how scary and intimidating it was to learn new things. I've tried really hard to always push myself to go into new situations, learn new skills, and it doesn't have to be web to learn these sort of things. A couple of months ago, I had this idea. I think I saw somebody do it, and I was like, yeah, I'll do this. I took trapeze lessons, or I took a class. I don't want to go into too much, because you could do that. And I'm like, okay, why not? Let's try that out. And it was terrifying, but I did it. And from now on, it's going to be a really great reminder of like, oh, that's right. Sometimes when it doesn't matter if you're not standing up on a platform, God knows how high, and getting ready to jump off. Even if you've got a harness on, and even if people are there to tell you exactly what to do, it's really scary to take that first jump off of there. And maybe you're just learning something new on a computer, which seems like it doesn't really match, but you still feel the same way. You still feel this is really scary to learn something. I think the fresher that mentors can keep that experience in their minds of what it was like to learn, the better we're going to be able to help people who are coming in there, because we're going to be able to empathize with them. And we're going to be able to help them through that and help them jump off and do new things. So as I said before, hopefully you're here, so I don't necessarily have to sell you on why we do this. Hopefully you're all fired up for like, yes, I want to be a mentor and we should teach people and bring new people in, and this is all awesome. If you're not, that's okay too. I will talk a little bit about why I do feel that way and why I feel it's important. I covered a little bit of the need part where I feel that brass tacks, this is an industry need that we have and that is going to grow in the future. We need more people doing this stuff. So on one level, there's just that. There's just like, okay, we need people to do things. Like, let's bring more people in. I've talked about how what you can get as a mentor and as a teacher is you get a lot of really great opportunities to expand your own knowledge, solidify your own knowledge. There's no way better to learn what you don't know or what maybe you think you know, but you don't know that well, than trying to teach it to somebody else. Because that will very quickly show the gaps in your own understanding of something. There's been plenty of times when I've sat down and explained something to somebody, like, yeah, I use this all the time, totally understand it, and then I'm like, oh, wait, okay, yeah, I need to look something up about this, or I forgot this one piece that I thought I knew. So you can get a lot of it out of it for that, too. You can get stronger team members if you're bringing new people in, teaching them the right ways to do things, or taking the team members that you already work with and making them stronger in terms of their skill sets and their understanding in other areas. It's going to benefit you too. But I will say the best thing that I've gotten out of a teacher in all of my time as an educator is just getting to see potential be unlocked. I know it sounds kind of hippy-dippy and touchy, but it's true. It's really amazing to see somebody who didn't realize, or maybe actively thought that they couldn't do something, do it. I don't know if I have enough words to really describe how amazing it is to see that. And that is something that I feel everybody should be able to experience as a mentor, being able to unlock that potential for somebody else. And kind of going back around to what it gives you, it really reminds you maybe why you did this and started doing this in the first place too. Because what we do is really, really fun. And it is. It's super fun. And we are really lucky to get to do this all the time. That's how I feel, at least. Maybe some people have slightly different opinions. But I feel this is really fun. I feel extremely fortunate that I get to do this every day as my job. And the idea that I might be able to make that clear to somebody else and enable somebody else to do that as well is invaluable to me. So this is my daughter. She's a great source of inspiration for me. I have asked her permission to use all this stuff in talks, and she's like, yeah, of course. And of course, then she sits here and ignores me when I actually do the talk. So as I mentioned before, I've been working with HTML with her. We haven't done anything recently. This is about a year or so ago. She has her own website. They're whiteboard magnets with HTML elements on them. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Cameron Moll, the designer. He actually has a free Illustrator file that he made and just put out on the internet. Buy some magnet sheets, and then you have HTML magnets, which is pretty awesome. They're on our refrigerator now. It's awesome. But that's what we would do when she was learning HTML, is because she's very visual, and so we would lay out the elements as a page, and then she would type them in. I asked her once to pick out her favorite element, and that's the one she picked for me. So I'm really interested, not just interested, I'm really passionate, and I care so much about education, and that making education better, and getting everybody on board with making education better. Because, as I said before, this is the generation that's coming up. I mentioned before that she has so many other technological advantages that I didn't. When she was young, I just assumed that she was going to be all into making things because she's got computers and she's got iPads. I still don't even have an iPad. You know, I bought one for her and I haven't got one for me yet. But it was like, well, she is going to have all these things that I didn't have, so she's going to be great. And what I learned is that when kids have all this stuff just around them, they take it for granted. They haven't really thought, like a lot of us other people have, of what it took to get there. There's something, I'm not the only person who's talking about this, but it's became very clear to me that we're in danger sometimes of seeing more people come up to be consumers rather than creators. And I actually think that's really scary and dangerous, not to mention we're depriving them of all the great joy and potential there is in creating things. So on both sides, it's just, there's nothing good there. I think having people who understand how to create, they don't have to create all the time. Consuming is fun sometimes too. But having the ability to create, to not be held back because you don't know how to create something, I think is really, really important. So I want my daughter to be a creator. I don't want her to just be consuming what other people are making for her. I think this is also really important when it comes to thinking about what types of people are creating. We should have as many different people from as many different backgrounds and as diverse creators as possible so it can reflect the people who are going to be using the things that we're making. So I want everybody to go out there and mentor whatever they have to offer and continue to learn themselves and just create this whole cycle of learning and bringing new people in so that we can create a whole generation of people who understand how to create things from all of what they bring to it from their own lives and backgrounds for other people out there. It's going to help the actual mentors, but it's also going to create this community that we live in that will keep feeding itself as we go throughout. And that's all I've got for you, so thank you.